Okay, thank you, Isabel. Thank you, everyone, for joining us, the last session before lunch. Let me start by introducing myself. Is this okay? Oh, yeah? Okay. So my name is Hester Gersonius. I've been working for and with museums for almost a decade. I started my career at the Amsterdam Museum in the Netherlands, working on diverse projects with an emphasis on innovation and participation. Since 2 years, I've been working as a freelance community manager. I love to work with organizations that work on the cutting edge of art, design, and technology. And I am also the content manager for smARTplaces. So I was very excited about this panel because I personally feel, and I always stress that in my projects, digital should not be a goal, but it should be a tool to connect with your audiences. And that's what we are going to talk about today. You're very welcome to join the discussion at the end of the session. So on the stage, let me start by introducing our guests. Javier, you work at the communication department of the Museo del Prado in Madrid. Javier has a degree in humanities and advertising and public relations. You worked for a cultural management company and in the arts marketing consultancy Asimetrica. And for the regional administration in Madrid. You've been with Prado for 5 years. And you're going to talk about a very special project, I think, in which you are sharing daily videos with your audiences through, is that Instagram or? Through Instagram, yes. So after that, Martin will show you what he is working on. Martin Adam has been programming since he was 15 and been developing applications for mobile and devices since 2003. Works in particular for cities, museums, churches and libraries, and you use augmented reality and location-based technology. So what Martin will talk about today is museums and mobile applications. So, and then last but not least, we have Dick Van Dijk with us. Dick works for Waag in Amsterdam. It's a media lab that explores the impact of technology on society. And as the head of program for the Future Heritage Lab, you create interactive concepts, you strategize design research and user involvement, and monitor the development of the actual thing. And that can be a prototype, a demo, or an event. Yes. So we actually work together at the Amsterdam Museum, but you also work, among other things, for the Old Church in Amsterdam and through several EU projects as well. So that for now. Javier, the stage is yours.
Thank you. A ver si se puede ver bien. Bueno, voy a hacer la intervención en castellano, me parece más lógico.
Spanish, since I am Spanish.
Bueno, antes de nada quería presentarme. Me llamo Javier. Bueno, ya no me ha presentado. Muchas gracias. Bueno, quería agradecer que me hayan invitado a...
I am Javier. Thank you very much for having invited me to be here and to show you the work we are doing through Instagram. They are live videos, Monday through Friday. 10 minutes before the museum opens doors. We open at 10, so from 10 to 10 to 10. So we explain a piece of art or some other curiosity we think it may be relevant for the future visit. What is the origin of this project? Well, since summer 2017, we started to experiment with Periscope and with other videos, other formats, and we were just starting, and we had a bit more of margin to go wrong and to test new things. So we started to see that there was an interest by the audience, that there were people interacting with us. So we started to think, well, what to answer, who is going to be the voice, because you are acting on behalf of the museum. Who, a curator? I don't know. So we started to moderate language and adapt to the requests. What kind of works are shown, or how do we choose them? Well, we do it all in a very formal way. What we want is to be in the shoes of the visitor and things that may call their attention. For example, as soon as you come in the Museum of the Prado, there are two works that are almost similar. One, a copy of Rubens, and one, the real work by Tiziano. Well, then we explain these kind of details, curiosities. And what happened? Well, I think that things went too big for us. It started to have a lot of impact. At the beginning we had 200 followers, and right now we have 1,500 people who see these videos every day, live. And then 24 hours after the videos, we reached 12,000, 14,000 visitors. Not bad, depending on the day. And in this regard, the scope of these videos is huge. For example, you can see here an article or a statement. This is a journalist who was who had just undergone surgery. He was still in hospital recovering, and there were 200 people watching us every day, and he published this article. We got to see it just by chance, really. So you see the power of these technologies. You're opening up the Museum of El Prado to everybody. That's what someone mentioned before. You have to go to where the audience is. The Museum El Prado is in Madrid, but it has an international vocation. So you have to take the piece of work to where people are. So we are in everybody's mobile device. What do you do when you wake up? Well, you just look at your cell phone. So we are there in the cell phones. And then, if you can, this should end up in a physical visit to the museum. Well, it was very much welcomed and embraced. We started to get many comments, for example, Twitter. Very representative, because usually we have female visitors, 63% are women more or less, and very varied, really. When we get questions after the videos, probably they ask us about the official exams to enter university. Imagine, no? They are 18 years old. Or other questions that I think is great is, who is Goya? What is the Museum El Prado? Well, it is great. Imagine that today you get to know an artist who is as Goya. It is a great day, a fantastic day. That is our aim. Because our mindset is very local, no? Spain, Europe. But these people may be asking you questions from Jamaica. So why someone from Jamaica should know Goya or Velázquez? So many times as well, they share with us their paintings or their drawings. Oh, you establish a relationship. That's really good. This is very interesting, because then you're creating a routine, a habit. We wanted to create a habit, okay? Not the museum as a big building, going back to the 800 with big columns, no, but when you are in your slippers at home having a coffee and you are watching the museum from your cell phone, you're already inside watching the pieces of work, and that is great. And you comment on the piece of work in a very humble way. We just show you the piece of work. If you like them, then here you have more information, and experts will tell you all about the piece of work. we've shown 400 videos, more or less, altogether. Well, this is just for you to have an idea of the scope. You do not know who is watching you. If you look here to the right, there is a comment, and we have Maxi dead. He was the former Minister of Culture, your boss, is watching you. So he's listening to you live, imagine. That's something you may ignore or neglect or take as an anecdote, but it is not an anecdote. It is your boss, and he's the Minister of Culture. And something that happened to us, the director of the museum or some other relevant people, their sons or friends have told them, hey, I really like the live videos on Instagram. For some of them it was first news. But if the son likes them, that is better than any report coming from the University of Harvard. So this is another important note, no, or comment.
And we generate a community with these live sessions to see who connects first. And here we can see the first picture. This is like a leaflet. You write down suggestions and you can leave it physically at the museum. That means that's the correlation between physical parts and the online visitors. And so that is also something that's difficult to measure. And in the middle, there's another person who, whilst they're watching it live, the person on the right was a curator. This person was taking notes while they were looking at the mobile and making sketches. And that is what the museum wants. It's to show the collection, but for people to feel that they are participating, they form part of the museum. And this has led to challenges to dance, more than 400 videos, and there's a challenge regarding the voice, who's speaking, who's going to talk. We did a bit trial and error, really, and we wanted the stars of the session to be the artworks, but if there is a voice, that person does know how to express things, and you identify yourself with that person, or maybe there's empathy, or maybe there's not. So we want, as I say, the artworks to be the stars or the main players of the session. Then, of course, another thing is the language, English. How do you increase your audience? We do it all in Spanish because 90% of our audience speak Spanish. In the Louvre, for example, they do a lot of English, but I think it's more an international concept, the Louvre Museum in Paris, but in the Prado Museum, I think the public, we have tried to do things in English, but the reception isn't very good. You know, our National Museum, why do they do it in English? There's a bit of rejection to that. So we've decided to do it on occasionally, but the format works because it's easy and it's done always done the same. It's every day. It has to be easy. So it could be converted into a routine. So there we've got a bit of conflict as well. The videos only last for 24 hours. They disappear. The videos age very badly. So if you go to YouTube, you watch a video from 2013 of the Prado Museum, it's terrible. But live, it's even worse. But the memory of when you've seen it, I was delighted with it. I loved watching that video. I don't remember what they said, but the image was fantastic, and you remember things, and that makes you want to study the work in greater depth. I also wanted to mention the statistics. We're going like at a dizzy rate, really, with all of this, and the previous speaker talked about this too. You want to do lots and lots of things. It's like a spiral, but you don't have to tell everything. We're competing for attention in Twitter. It's hard work preparing all this content. And where is all of this taking us? Well, we're reflecting on what we want to do, what we want to communicate. We're communicating a lot continuously, but who are we? What are we? Because we can have some threads in Twitter that are fantastic, but we are competing with the Tinder. You're not talking about Goya, for example. So we're going to see what we're good at and focus a little bit more on that. I think we have to reflect more on those aspects and become necessary. As a format, I like the format of time. Everybody, the weather rather, it's the same word in Spanish, excuse me. The weather, everybody knows that the weather comes after the news. Maybe they talk about the weather in Stockholm. You don't care about what the weather's going to be like in Stockholm. You're getting news over and over again, continuously. These are sort of like this competition, and we have to know where we're going and where we want to go. Well, to finish, we have to humanize the technology. These live sessions are working because they're done in a more human manner. There's a person there talking. When you have got a fault, something wrong with your phone or something wrong with your dishwasher, whatever, and you ring up and you just get a machine and it's uncomfortable, you don't know what to do. And Alexa, for example, is more personalized, more individualized, but we human beings have the need to talk to other human beings and not be treated like algorithms or data, but to be treated as human beings. So what has worked for us is to do it more humane, more personal, of course, taking advantage of the goodness of technology, which would be unthinkable in the past. And that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. One question. Is it difficult to find new content every day?
Voy a contestar en castellano si...
I'm going to answer in Spanish. We are lucky to have some fantastic collections with a lot of history at the museum. There are thousands of ways of addressing them. So it would seem like yes, but no.
Okay.
Okay.
Great. So you can continue for many, many, many years.
I hope so.
Yeah. Thank you. Martin, are you ready? Okay, great.
So yeah, here I am. We just switched this on. Yeah. Oh yeah, okay. So hi, my name is Martin. As Hester said, I'm writing code since 1985 for over 30 years now. So I belong to this group of people living in mom's cellar and having these empty pizza boxes and lemonade bottles around myself. No, honestly, that's not the case, of course. I'm very thankful to all these talks before our panel and even your talk because it fits so much into what I wanted to say. I'm the technician, so in 2003, when I started focusing on culture, on the cultural sector, I was totally into tech. Everything had to be tech and had to be watched from the technology side because the technology will lead to the content and to the story and everything. Well, as we know, this is totally wrong. With my 30 years of experience, I learned so much over the time. Well, learning means I made so many mistakes in this time, and only through those mistakes I really had these learning effects on how to do things better. What I want to go into it, you just said this before, people are at home on their sofa, very well fed with content, and it's so hard really to publish a new digital mobile application. If it's an app or a web app or QR codes thing, people are already have consumed so much of content, and every new project we are launching has to be something new, something very special, or it has to be something which is already connected to something existing in the world. So, of course, I earn my money by developing nice applications.
Would you like me to stop? I'm sorry to interrupt, but I think the video's running or not.
No, just go on. 15 minutes of video.
You really?
Yes! They gave me 15 minutes, so I thought of having 15 minutes of video also gives me 30 minutes in altogether. So.
Sorry.
No problem, no problem. Where was I? Oh yeah, the thing is that so everything I earn my money through developing apps and selling apps to museums and cities and even churches. But what I find out is it doesn't make sense to publish all these little silo projects because they don't run. And my clients in the end, you as museums, will be very angry on me if we publish not successful things. So within the last years, I found out that we developed all this cool stuff. Technology is something that is existing today. We did this with a platform for ourselves, but we always had used about 80% of our time to develop the technology, and then only had 20% of time to make really cool applications. And that has been a big fault, and a lot of projects we launched hasn't been successful because nobody really was thinking about the whole concept in the beginning, about the storytelling, the marketing, even the content and the design. We were all just doing technology, augmented reality, virtual reality, all this stuff is cool, very cool technology, but using it needs a concept, and we have been launching so many apps without a real good concept. And what we are just experiencing in Berlin, that the cultural institutions are starting really to work together. They understand, yeah, there might be some contestants on the market, but that's not true. But they had this feeling before, and now they're getting together and understanding, especially in the digital world, we have to work together because we all don't know anything. This is a very young topic for us. And even they start now in Berlin very low. They start to learn themselves because they don't trust us anymore. We've been in these projects. We tried to help them using good technology, but in the end we talked them into things that they didn't understand, and then these projects really ended somewhere. And they stopped them, and all these good applications that we developed, good and technical, have been gone from the market because they didn't really work. So what we're trying to do now is we really partner up with our clients, with our museums, with the cultural institutions, with the cities, to start with the main concept of storytelling, of marketing, and really thinking of these questions we just had about who am I, what am I aiming at, who I'm addressing to. These things have to be really clearly defined before you start even thinking of technology. And start small. Small. Don't do these big, huge projects. Even our smARTplaces project became a huge machine in the end. But it is always better to start with a very, very small thing. Even the QR code. I know most people don't like the QR codes anymore, but it's the easiest tool to use digital information in the real world outside. Because it's easy to print, it's easy to have a little website behind it, and it will give you the chance to learn to interact with digital information and with your visitors and the people that are outside in the world. And based on this starting point, you do the next step. You do QR codes, then you go with a little web app maybe, and then you decide, is it something that works for my institution, or do I have to go to a native app, because some technologies only work with native apps. But that's a decision you have to make. I as a developer shouldn't talk you into these high technology things, because you have to learn first how these things work. And every institution is totally different. But we try to start to develop standards, to develop canvas models where we can put all museums in. It doesn't work. In the end, it's a local business. You have to think about your local place. We have to help you with thinking it. We are just always the ones that can help you with having the container, the technology container, but you have to fill it in the end. Of course, with our experience as developers in many projects, we know a lot of things that have been done wrong, so we can help you to do things better. And especially, you had this topic just about developing content for cultural institutions. It's not just a question of producing a lot of content, but even to think about the formats. Because in this new upcoming digital world, the formats are quite clear. You always have to produce very high contrast media files, because the technology is able to always calculate down, but never be able to calculate up. So always produce high-level content and think about the formats. Like there are some really specific formats that are used today, like 4:3, 16:9 formats for images. Don't do different things, because if you do, the developer you're working with later on has to change something in his mind and in his technology to address your formats you're using. So always think about what you want to produce on content side, and ask the technology how they live together, how they're doing it today. Let me think. Let's see what I. Well, yes. I just talked about the QR codes and web apps and progressive web app, which is a very new topic today. So deciding on the technology is something very hard, because people outside will tell you, my technology I'm working with is the best. And in the end, it isn't. It might be the wrong one, because it's not the one you should use. We are just talking about this progressive web app. Everybody is talking about progressive web app, a web technology that can save data on devices. Forget about it. Wait for another 5 years until this technology really works, especially in the sector of museums, because when we do museum applications, we have a lot of content, and progressive web app just can store very small content. So it doesn't make sense to store just a little bit of a lot, but you need the stored data in the end. Native apps, yeah. Maybe you can see all these examples that have been developed by us, all in the same platform. We are now in the situation that it takes 20% of our time to develop the technology for these apps, and we put 80% of our time really into the storytelling, into the communication concepts, into the content development help and the design, to really make these cool apps like here, the Time Traveler app, which is an augmented reality app in the end, which is pretty cool. But yeah, it needs this canvas model to do it, and you need the time to really think this through. This has been something where we tried to put the people into the view of the cameraman at the time of the building of the wall, and it took us a year, but the technology wasn't that big problem. It was really the story and all the situations we had. Yeah, that's what I was starting about, the collaboration. In Berlin, everybody is working together. That's where I was coming from. Launching your own project means you have to market it. And marketing an app today is very, very hard, because, as I said, everybody is sitting at home, well-fed with content, and you really have to have something special that leads them to download your mobile application or your content or whatever you're using. So think of who you could collaborate with. In Berlin, we have, for example, the TV tower in Berlin. It's very central touristic attraction, and it's really a symbol of one of the symbols of Berlin. Well, and we're just adding the cultural institution applications into the app of the TV tower, because the TV tower app is already working. It gets downloaded through the tourists because they are visiting the TV tower, and we just try to combine these things together, because you don't have to do the marketing for this app. You just have to tell your visitors, use the television tower app, or we have 3 other apps in Berlin, like the Smart City app and the Berlin Mural Fest app. We combine all these projects together, have just a few main apps in Berlin, and try to get all these different content into these 3 projects. The technology is there. This is not some kind of problem to develop these bigger sized apps. We think about channels. So if you're at the TV tower and you have this app, and this app leads you to the museum, at the museum you press a button, and this new channel of the museum, as the museum app, will open for you in the same app. It is an existing technology, but you have to think this, and you have to talk to the people to get together. And we have this museum think tank in Berlin where we meet every 6 weeks with all the digital people from the museums, and that's where we are starting to produce these ideas to work together. And of course, it really saves money, because not everyone has to develop his own app. What's that? Has to develop his own app, because we just do it once. Of course, there is some additional money for these channels, so you have to pay the developers for the channels, but it's much cheaper than producing your own app, and you can learn together. Everything that happens, like here, this is one of these collaboration apps. You might heard of this today, the smARTplaces app, which was launched today. We are very happy about that. This is the iOS version. The Android version is also just ready. I don't know if it's already in the store. We were just waiting for the okay from Google. This app was made with 8 different museums working together, thinking about how can a future museum app look like. We had this idea of the story world logic, which is kind of new. Well, it might fail, but failing is not bad, because failing is always also learning. So, but you got to communicate about it. It's if you do a new project, if you try something, before you do it, or before you go to the outset, think on how you will communicate. You're trying, and not only just you're not publishing something. You're trying to publish something, because nobody knows in this world really knows how the future will look like, how your specific project will look like. So, talk about failing. Go out there and say, we just made a try. And maybe we fail, and if we fail, we change it and make it better. So that's the next point, because if you use a normal developer, you will pay him until the project is done, then he turns around and he runs, because bug fixing is hell. So try to find developers that will work on with you, that are not only developing but hosting and maintaining your digital projects for a long time, because it's a question of relation to the developer, as we just heard before. You really have to get friends with your developers, because you both are producing a baby. The moment this app is existing, it starts having hunger and starting to raise, and it needs changes. It needs you have to work with it. So the developer always has to be on your side, and the developer has to even look at your baby too, and see if things are happening, and he has to react whenever something happens. So there's really a strong relationship to the technical developer. Yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Maybe one more point. This is very interesting, the new indoor navigation through augmented reality. I just saw this a few days ago. It's working. So you really can navigate people through augmented reality indoors through museums, which is really, everybody told us it would work, but it didn't. it didn't ever. It was always just a story and just some future stories. Now it works. I tested it. It's really cool. And I've been to Helsinki just on Monday, talking to people, to a company, to a startup company, working with beacons. We used beacons for a long time. And we heard of these little Bluetooth devices that don't work at all because it's always very inaccurate. Nobody knows how to work with it. This company from Helsinki found out how beacons really work, but it needs an own startup to understand technologies like this and focus on this to really make this happen. And I'm very happy that I've been there, seeing that it works and that we can use beacons in the future to really locate people very, very accurate in a room, in a museum, and help them with specific information. Even we talk about this push technology, like you're getting closer to an exhibit and plop, the information pops up and tells you exactly what you want to tell the visitor at that point. And so I'm really happy that this is coming up. Yeah, I think, and think about the production of content. It takes more time than you think. Much more time. Double, triple, fourth of the time producing content. You think you got this content already in your house? Yes, but not in the way that you can use it for digital applications in the end. So there's a big process behind it to really reproduce or reuse your existing content and putting it into the technology or the technical infrastructure. So if you plan to have a project, think of, well, at least 50% of the time will go into the content production. I think it's more 80%. So think about the budgets, think about the people that have to be involved. That's the other thing, involving people. What I experienced in my project was always have all people together at a table in the beginning and make them understand the same story. So if you get the feeling that the people are not talking the same language, this project will crash in the end. Very from the start on, you have to have one story, one feeling. Everybody has to have his heart in this project because this is really, really an effort. We had this in the smARTplaces project. This has been a long project now, and we talked so many times and found out that it needs everyone to have the same understanding of what we're doing. And now we are successful. We had to start. It was the learning with so many museums in one project, and I'm very happy that we did it. But I just can give you the advice. Think about the content production as the biggest part of a digital project today. Yeah, I think that's what I wanted to say and to show. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. One question while Dick sets up. I know you build both commercial and cultural apps. From a development point of view, what makes cultural apps so special?
The chance of doing cool storytelling and influence people by doing it. It's we've got the chance to address so many different people and tell them different stories, even to the same exhibit. We've done so many projects with one app for different people at the same time, like a family, father, mother, and a kid, and have an app which addresses all three. These are the tasks you're having and thinking about how to do this. And it's really fun to think about it, build up the stories, find maybe historical persons to lead people through historical sites. That's very cool. It's so much fun.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. Waiting for the slides to switch. My name is Dick Van Dijk. I work at Waag, and I want to talk to you a little bit about what Waag is, because we're a foundation, and we have a mission, and our mission is to research the added value of technology for society. So if you think about how technology is kind of imposing on today's society in good ways, and maybe also in bad ways, but we want to understand what it is that actually technology can contribute in certain questions. So if you talk about society aging, we're getting all older, can we think about positive ways how technology can improve that, not by putting in surveillance mechanisms or monitoring mechanisms for elderly people, but helping them to stay connected longer socially, or to think of new ways we can learn together, not by just adding technology to classrooms, but to kind of redesign the classroom experience altogether and think about informal learning and informal learning places. So we take technology as a starting point for how we want to look at how things are changing at the moment. And we come from more of a hacker or maker background. So everything we do, we always try to make something, whether that's a prototype, a technical prototype, or a demo of some sort, or just a cardboard box of something. Because we believe that in the making process, if we start making things together, building stuff together, then we have a different conversation than we would just now talk about technology. We stay at a certain meta level, but if we have to make something together, build something together, then we have to negotiate, then we have to understand each other. Then we just can't assume that the words I use, that you understand them and that we have assigned the same meaning to it, but in the collaborative making, we kind of decide what it is going to be and illustrate what the conversation was between us. And this is a quote that I like to use. It's not our quote, it's an author, Donna Haraway, but it's something that's very intrinsic to the way that we work and we look at technology. She says, technology is not neutral. It's inside everything we make, and it's inside of us as people. And we live in a world of connections, and it matters which connections get made and unmade. If you think about like a self-driving car, which is a big discussion in terms of technology, that we can just allow the cars to drive for us, but someone is programming those algorithms in the car, and someone has a certain perspective on which choices the cars should make. If I, as a driver, don't know what the algorithm has as some sort of a worldview, whether if there's two people in front of me and one is an elderly lady and the other one is a child, and the car decides that one he can evade and the other one he can't evade, I would like to know what choices he is programmed to make. So we have to understand technology at some level. But today I'm going to talk much more about, or maybe this is an important one, the guiding values. We always say technology should be open, fair, and inclusive connects very much to the topic of today, but also open, that we all can access technology and that we all can use technology. Today I want to talk more from the work we do in the heritage domain, and we do a specific project with the old church, the Oude Kerk. It's the oldest building in Amsterdam. And they came to us with a question whether or not augmented reality would be something that is important to the heritage sector to look into in terms of a new visitor experience. And I do think that for the heritage domain that is an important thing. But for me, the interesting question there was much more in how can mixed reality, I'd rather define it as mixed reality than augmented reality. I'll say a little bit about that. But can this technology help us to look at reality better? So rather than imposing a different worldview or a different storyline or different characters in augmented reality over the space of the church, can the technology actually help me as a visitor to recognize things in the space, or to start thinking about this space or reflecting on the space? And the reason why we want to do that is because the building is such an impressive thing in itself. So you don't want to take away from the building. So if I would use complete virtual reality, then I wouldn't see the actual building anymore. And if I use Pokemons in the church, which is a thing, it would be a completely different storyline. And what we wanted, and that's why we call it mixed reality, can the augmented reality actually enhance the experience of space? And this specific place is an interesting one because it's a church that used to be Catholic when it was built, but in the 16th century Amsterdam changed from being mainly Catholic to Protestant. And Protestant means that they cut out all the color, they cut out all the statues, the paintings, and made it into a very serene white building. But you can still see the scars where there used to be a painting, or where there used to be a statue, or where there used to be something. But if you don't look at it that way, at the building, you just think, oh, it's a white building. But if you really look closely, but then someone actually has to point out there was something. So can augmented or mixed reality can mixed reality do that specific thing for us. So in a specific place of the building, and we chose the high choir, so the choir where actually the priest was, which was a secluded area in the Catholic time, but is now an open space. Can you actually start recognizing where statues have been, where paintings have been, where certain murals or decor has been, and by only augmenting a very small part of the space, only the choir. Once you leave the choir, will you start looking at the rest of the building in the same way? So also start looking at, hey, something might have been here. What could it have been? So that it triggers my own imagination rather than that a designer decided where to put the stuff. But it actually helps my imagination or my way of looking at things. And that's something we did with the Hololens. That's the picture you see on the left. It's hard to see maybe, but it's these big glasses which claim to be immersive, but in a way it's still a small screen that you're looking through. And on the right you see a little bit of a statue that used to be there, which doesn't exist anymore, which is a reproduction. But we also didn't want to reconstruct completely. That's why it's changing color, it's changing shape. Otherwise you suggest what the space looked like when we actually don't know what the space looked like, because there's no record of it. But we also tried some other thing, and the reason why we try different things is because when we develop technology with heritage institutions, we like to, and that's the learning curve that you talked about, Martin, is that you need to create a shared vocabulary, you need to create a shared understanding, and you need to see what the real question of the institution actually is in building stuff together. So we also did something else on an iPad and on a telephone, which uses the floor plan, which you see on the right there, the floor plan of the church as a marker, and then on your telephone or on the iPad you see the actual building in 3D, and you can zoom through it in different years. So you see that it was actually a very small church when it started, and when certain things were added, and the tower was added, and the roof was elevated. So you see how the building changed through the years, which is something that's hard to see when you're in an imposing space like a church. You think it's always been there, it's always been like that. But actually, once you've seen how it grew organically through the app, you also start recognizing it in the way you navigate the space, that some things are crooked, some things are different because they are additions from other times. And the nice things, both from the HoloLens thing, the glasses, and this handheld devices, is that it actually allowed people to move through the space differently, because that's something very important for us, that we don't put digital screens in between everything, but that we use the technology as a way to invite different behavior in a way. So when you see like the girl who's holding her phone like there towards the map, it seems like she's looking at the screen. She is looking at the screen, but she actually moved around the floor plan a lot to see how things change through the ages. So it's a different behavior than just getting the information on your iPhone and only looking at your smartphone. But also she started to move from the image that she had on the telephone, which is the 3D model of the church, to actually navigate the space and see if she was able to recognize those things in space. So it allows you to experience the space in a different way. And I think that's the interesting thing here of this mixed reality technology is it's a storytelling device, definitely, and you can create story worlds and lots of exciting things, but it also can help to enhance things that are already there and connect to a story that's now not told within the church, because in this specific church the whole story of the building is never told. It's just a space that you navigate through and you don't know exactly what you're looking at. So that's really a big addition to the space. And the way we talk about technology, and Hester, you have to stop me after 15 minutes because I prepared way too much slides. And another project in the same line, in the way we try to work together with the old church to kind of help them elicitate their specific question that they have towards this technology or towards this application that they want us to design, is another project called Mesh. where the central question was whether or not objects in a museum can be central rather than the screen. So again, not putting a screen in between, but can the objects do the storytelling in a certain way? And for that, we found that it's really important that curators and museum professionals can really do their own experimenting and their own prototyping, because it's still a different thing if you tell to me how to design something, I go away and design something and I come back and maybe it is not right, but to actually prototype stuff together. So what we did here is try to take away a little bit of the fear of technology that a lot of museums have, because you don't know technology, you're not the expert on it, it costs a lot of money, you don't know which platform to choose. There's so many technical questions that get into the way of experimenting and trying things out. So the goal of Mesh was to see if we can take those barriers away and create an authoring toolkit, it is called, that would actually allow you to embed your own specific content that you have as a museum, the objects that you have, the stories that you have, the images, into smart objects. And then one example of that is a loop, a magnifying glass. And let me see if I can play the video for that. And what it actually does, I'll talk over it a little bit, is we created a magnifying glass, which actually is just a smartphone in a wooden casing. So nothing fancy in there. But by creating this wooden casing with a handle on it, you create a completely different behavior towards an object. So by looking through this magnifying glass, you become a researcher rather than someone who is observing objects, and you can show things that are not really able to, that you're as a visitor not able to see, or because you're not able to touch the object, you're not able to walk around it, or you're not able to look inside it or look on the back of it. So here augmented reality actually helps you to find out stories that you're not easy to, you don't get to see easily. But I like most is the embodied thing of the interaction, that it actually, you saw children walking through the museum like this and trying to find new objects and new stories. So it puts you in a very active position towards the objects and trying to find the stories rather than just consuming information and taking things in. So we created a prototyping toolkit. I won't go into too much detail. That actually has sensors and markers and stuff, etc. in there. And it has a content system where you can actually swap your own content in the existing examples. We call them recipes. So we created a number of recipes. Like with cooking, you know the dish, but some people like to add a little bit more salt or want to change Spanish tomatoes for Dutch tomatoes or the other way around. So you can swap things inside that system. So whether or not you want to create the same mechanism as the loop that we had, the magnifying glass, put your own content in it and it does the same thing. Or then you can also say, but I don't like the loop. I want to create a, how do you call something like this? A telescope. So you have some elements that you can switch the parameters around and you can play with, so you can create different experiences, and not so much that these experiences are the end results, because they are still prototypes of interaction, but they actually help you to articulate what it is you want to tell, and then give a better briefing to designers or technology companies, and to have a different conversation and different vocabulary about technology. I think I'll skip this example because there's something else I want to tell you about our methodology. Because we mix a lot of different methodologies in the way we design stuff with people. So it's a bit of design thinking. It's very much co-creation, which I will talk about tomorrow in the workshop. It's very much coming from a maker culture, but there's one specific method that's very relevant for today. It's called emotion networking. And it's a way that we use to help people articulate stories about heritage. So often the stories about heritage is what year is the object from, or the building from, what material is it made from, who made it, who designed it, how was it used. Very factual, whereas we all have emotions in relation to heritage. If you talk about the old church, the example, my first example, because it's a religious object, it's in the city, it used to be Catholic, now it's Protestant, actually now it's commercial. People have different feelings about heritage, and in some cases you need to be explicitly aware of those stories and actually can use those stories to create a more layered narrative as a museum. And this emotion network is a method in which people that have very different feelings about certain contested heritage objects, we bring them together and we bring them in a sort of a format, a conversation, where we acknowledge the different feelings and see how people that's why we call it network, because people have seem to be opposed. It seems to be black and white often when you have contested heritage, and that actually it's not that black and white, it's not that different in certain aspects, that there is some more empathy and more understanding. And we're trying to create these physical networks between people. Once they have a discussion, that their positions are placed in a specific space between them, so that they actually have an active relationship physically in the building as well towards the different statements. And there can be physical, approachment or withdrawal from certain standpoints and certain discussions. And we also map them digitally afterwards, so that you can see around a specific object here, there's very different types of emotions, where yellow here represents happy and purple means disgust, I think. So you see that people have very different emotions towards a specific object here, which I won't go into, but that you actually can map and show to people how we kind of relate to this object, and people can find their own personal entry point in towards those stories, rather than that there's one dominant perspective towards this object. And now I think I have to finish.
Yes, I was about to stop you there. Yes, because we have a few minutes, I do want to give the audience a minute to approach. Question for you, as we have so many technologies, platforms, there right now. Some people are thinking that maybe we are moving away from technology in the future. How do you feel about that?
Well, I think in a way we're moving away, at least we become much more conscious, but on the other hand it's so pervasive, even if it's not visible, it's so much kind of influencing our society, the way we are so natural working on telephones, we don't even realize anymore that we already have all these extensions of our body. And if you see how the self-driving cars, the way it supports medical operations in a hospital, I don't think we really will move away, but it will become maybe a more intuitive place, rather than now we have to learn to deal with technology, and the other way around. It would be better if we can if technology adapts to us. I think that's the next phase, maybe.
Yeah. Does anyone have a question? We have 4 minutes left.
Sorry.
We have an extra minute. I just hear. Anyone? Yes? Do you have a microphone? Yeah.
Hola, buenos días. Esta pregunta va para Javier.
This is a question for Javier. You mentioned your videos for Instagram. There is another initiative, I guess. You've developed it targeting a different audience. I don't know whether you know. With an open access, so that all the audience can participate with the content of the museum in a different way. Yes. Cartel Abierta is another initiative. There are 5 pieces of works, and usually the museums put the official text of the museum, what the museum wants you to know about that piece of work. So we invite everybody to propose their own cartel, okay? Because maybe you're more interested on fashion or whatever. Yes, it is a solution we have searched. when looking for that interaction, listening to the audience, but take into account that is very difficult because, for example, in social media, I am answering. If there are 100 people asking, there cannot be a conversation because it is me alone answering. So in this case, yes, this space is open. The cartelas is a competition. The one that wins the competition will be edited and published and launched and placed next to the piece of work. So that's really interesting, really. The idea is to find these kind of initiatives to connect online and offline, and, well, to give the opportunity to others to be the voice so that we are not always the voice.
For Javier. I saw on the pictures you've shown that the social media content was liked by 11 people or 7 people. So I was wondering, do you think the amount of work that runs into that is in balance with the output that you get from it? And the other question would be, did you do research on the people who actually react on your content? Because usually on social media, the same people react on the same institutions. So, yeah, that's like 2 questions, but they have a lot in common with each other.
Yes, I think that the first question, not always. Sometimes, in the case of the live video, yes, I think it's worthy. We have a lot of support from people, from the institution. So yeah, I think definitely it's worthy, but not always. As I talked before, for example, in Twitter, we have, I don't know, sometimes yes, sometimes no. I think we have to think about that because our resources, we have limit to our resources, so we have to make good use of them. And in the second, bueno, está la traducción, no sé si.
Okay, someone is translating, so I will translate.
Perdona.
I will address you in English, in Spanish.
Yes, we try to follow or to know who are our followers. But when we have such numbers, it's really difficult. But yeah, we also, I would like to say that apart from the comments in the live video, we receive around 250 direct messages each day. And we try to reply all of them, at least to say, all right, I read your comment. So it's really hard, and that's the thing. How far can we go with this? I don't know, because it takes a lot of work.
So how far do you think you should go? Because what is the goal, and considering the why are you doing this in the first place? So why interact with your audience in this particular way?
Because I think it's very important for the people to, the Museo del Prado, to reply you is really important. It's something emotional. It's, this big building is replying to me. And you can feel it that it's important for the people. So well, at the moment we try to keep on doing this because we realize that it's important, and let's see if we can keep it, how far we can go on.
Thank you. I want to wrap this up now. So next is lunch until 3. After lunch there is time to visit exhibitions at Etopia. We have tours coming up, and you can have a coffee in the back of the lunchroom with our speakers if you want to. So we'll be back here at 3:30 with our next keynote speaker. Thank you.